Is it okay for the church to get involved in the public arena? Should Christians be actively involved in the free elections of the United States of America? Faith Wins is an organization dedicated to engaging pastors, congregations, and Christians in the public arena. Why, you may ask? Because the influence of Christians needs to be felt around this country. Jesus is the solution, and we need to bring biblical solutions to the marketplace of ideas before it's too late, and we need to do it now. There are over 80 million eligible Christian voters in this country, but only 30 million regularly participate in the elections. This needs to change, and Chad Connelly is going to tell you why in just a minute. Check us out online at faithwins.us. That's faithwins.us. When we sit on the sidelines and hope for a better future, the enemy wins. When we mobilize, register, and make our voices heard, faith wins every time. Hey, thanks for tuning in today to the Faith Wins podcast. I'm your host, Jim Brangenberg, and I'm joined today by the founder of Faith Wins, which you can find online, faithwins.us, faithwins.us. We got Chad Connelly here. Chad, we're going to talk today about what happens when Christians get involved in the voting process. But let's just start with this question. How is Faith Wins bringing about cultural change in this country?
Well, hopefully our goals being met of we're raising the awareness. My goal is pretty simple. We're going to run the most robust, most accurately measured voter registration drive in evangelical church in modern political history. That's pretty simple. We're raising the awareness of the importance of being involved in the process for pastors and faith leaders across the country.
Wow. Okay. And saying all that, we're just engaging Christ followers in the process, some of them for the very first time. And we're doing that because, Chad, they need to know the statistic. Just say it again. How many eligible Christian voters are there in this country?
So everybody uses different definitions, but the best I found, weekly churchgoers around 80 million, maybe 82 million, give or take. But only 30 million vote in a typical election, actually a little bit less than 30 million vote that say I'm a Christian who actually voted. So by everybody's definition, somewhere between 40 and 50 million people sitting in a church on a typical Sunday aren't voting their values. And so it's really a part about, like you said, what happens when Christians get involved. But I think what people are seeing is what happens when they don't get involved. Maybe the examples are more clear right now than ever before, Jim.
I think they are more clear. How could they be any more clear? I mean, I think if I remember the night of the election in 2016, it was somewhere over 50 million for each one of the candidates, the presidential candidates. It wasn't much more. I can't remember the exact numbers, but it wasn't much more than 50 million for either one. And they were separated by just like a million votes. It was very, very tight. So, Chad, you saw on that night, you were involved in the Faith Engagement Initiative within the Republican National Committee. I remember we had you on the air running up to the convention, and you were trying to engage the Christian vote. What happened when the Christian vote, the church-going vote, got involved in the election in 2016? So we can just give people an example.
Well, it's exactly right. I mean, I had done city and state and, local elections. I'd been in the room when the numbers came in. That night I got to be in the room when the national numbers came in. It was really, really cool. Here's what happens. And I wrote to Reince Priebus in July 2013. I've got my documents. I said, if our side ever hits 80% of the evangelical vote, the left can't win. They can't win dog catcher. They can't win president. And amazingly enough, a guy named Donald J. Trump won 81%. It was a modern day record for evangelical turnout. I had seen what Governor Romney did in 2012. He had a big number. 78% of evangelicals voted for him, but it wasn't enough because there still were an awful lot who stayed home. In fact, he didn't have one single message to evangelicals. And let me just also say, evangelicals aren't Republican or Democrat or independent. But when they vote their values, they're going to vote for the more conservative candidate. That's clear from biblical direction that we have from teaching and from my understanding of the issues. And so when I saw that somebody who should be drawing in faith vote and evangelical vote wouldn't even talk about the issues, that's why that whole thing came about for GOP Faith. It's why Reince Priebus created a position, and I got to be the first ever national director of faith engagement for either party. And I said, if Christians would go vote their values, the left can't win. And when a guy, Donald J. Trump, that probably at first didn't identify with evangelicals very much as some of the other candidates, hit 81%, it proved my theory that, boy, this makes a difference when Christians go vote their values. And I believe they voted things like conservative judges, like life, like marriage, pro-Israel issues. those were prevalent in 2016. We see the difference now with judges being appointed.
Yeah, 4 years later, sorry, my lips are getting tied up. 4 years later, we've seen over 200 conservative judges, constitutional judges be appointed. We've seen more religious liberty things pass. I mean, our vote really mattered in the presidential election, but yet then you get into 2018, and a lot of us sat still. We didn't get involved in that, and Congress kind of flipped, and we've seen some incredible things in the last couple of years. So talk about some of the great stories. Give us one example of one really unfortunate story where somebody shouldn't have won an election, but the Christians sat at home, didn't vote, and they won anyway.
Well, it happens a lot. And the example, I know exactly when you're talking about. I go back to in the 1990s, Dr. Jerry Falwell had a great quote. I've used it dozens of places. He said, our problem is when we win, we quit. We assume it's all going to work out. When we lose, we quit. Either way, we spend all our energy ramping back up. Of course, people always pay more attention to the every 4-year election cycle. They should be paying attention to every election cycle. In 2016, there was a mayor in a large southern city who won an election. And at one of the very first city council meetings, she started tipping her hand about her entire agenda was about bathroom freedom. Now, I'm sure this city has plenty of problems other than who goes to what bathroom. But she said, well, boys should be able to go to girls' bathrooms if they feel like a girl. And it just should be based on their identity, not on the plumbing. I tell my kids, it's about the plumbing, right? It's just fact. Man, if Jesus doesn't come back for 1,000,000 years and they dig your carcass up, they're going to find boy or girl. That's just the truth. They're not going to be able to find a gender blender or some misidentified person. And I hate it. I hate that. But when it becomes a government mandate, and that's what happened in this large southern city. So this lady runs for mayor, gets elected, and pushes bathroom freedom. Well, we all know what happens. It went all over the country. It went to cities and counties, and states started to adopting this bathroom freedom to meet the transgender need for going to whatever bathroom they felt like, not based on their biological sex, not based on true natural law, but based on their feelings, Jim. And so it swept the nation. In one state in particular, we watched the ACC sports conference, the NBA, the NCAA literally held a state legislature hostage and demanded that they pass it. And of course they did. They caved. They claimed it would be economic hardship. What if the Christians quit supporting that stuff and they'd have real economic hardship? And so they intimidated the legislature right into passing it. It became law. It swept the entire nation. But here's the important part. When you look back at that election, 6% of the eligible voters turned out in that election for mayor.
6% on either side.
6%. 6% of the total number. One or two churches who had said, hey, look, it's mayor's race. It matters. Go vote biblical values. Find out what the candidates vote for. I'll take my pastor's hat off, but here's who I'm voting for and why. It would have made all the difference in the world. And so I have story after story after story like that from around the country where Christian non-involvement led to us having laws imposed on us. And I'll give you another example. As you know, and I've told the story, Dana and I are blended. We were both widowed and remarried. And so the first year that we had the kids, they were little. I guess the kids then were 10 and 8, 7 and 6. And so I was trying to think of ways to, really get the kids together. And so summer came after school and they were like, Dad, we're bored. We don't know what to do. We're bored. But good thing I'm a dad who knows the code for bored. What that means is you're saying, hey, Dad, can we pull weeds in the hot sun? Well, I knew the code. So yes, you can pull weeds in the hot sun. I have weeds. It's hot out. Let's go pull weeds. And of course, they became unbored pretty quickly after they pull weeds. Here's what happens, though, when government forces it. Say, anybody can go to whatever bathroom. Well, that's code for me. Hey, Connelly's, we don't want your money. I'm not going to subject my wife and daughters. My mom, who's passed away now, wouldn't subject them to go to a store that's going to let somebody that could be a pervert go to their women's restroom to take advantage of a silly ordinance or law. It just tells me don't go to that business. When a government mandates you must allow, I got a serious problem. I don't know if you knew this, New York City passed an ordinance not too long ago identifying 31 genders. 31. Now, they took city council time to determine this, Jim. They did. Now, Genesis 12 says male and female, he created them, but they found 31 somehow. But let's take it to the real, how this impacts us.
Please.
The law went on and said, if you don't identify someone by their preferred pronoun, there's a $1,000 fine per instance. And this applied to anybody whose doors were open in the city limits. That means churches. So churches are forced to call somebody by a preferred pronoun when we know it's not the truth. It's not natural law. It's not honest and accurate. It's about feelings. And there's a penalty. And so government has the power of penalizing people for not following their ordinances. So when Christians don't get involved, we get non-Christian things imposed on us. When Christians get involved, we say, wait a minute, that's not common sense. That's not natural law. It's not constitutional. And by the way, it's not biblical either.
So what you're saying is that when Christians get involved in the voting process, things change. And when they don't, things go the direction where everybody complains about it. And so we just need to get involved. We need
to get involved.
Wow. All right. And if you want to know how to get involved, go to our website, faithwins.us, faithwins.us. We need you in the voting ballot to vote your ballot according to biblical values in the fall. And we need you to get registered to vote and help those at your church to do the same as well. Chad Connelly, thanks.
Thanks, brother.
And remember, when you register to vote and you vote your biblical values according to your biblical worldview, faith wins. Hey, thanks for listening to the Faith Wins podcast with Faith Wins founder, Chad Connelly. I'm your host, Jim Brangenberg, and I want to ask you to check out Faith Wins online at faithwins.us. That's faithwins.us. Your vote is needed and necessary, and we all need to learn to engage in our system of free elections right here in the United States of America. If you're not registered to vote, please take time to do so on your local county voter registration website and do it today. In an upcoming election, vote for candidates supporting biblical values and a biblical worldview. Until next time, remember, when Christians engage in the public arena, faith wins.